Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Stratbase ADRi Institute Virtual Business Roundtable discussion on promoting broad-based prosperity through digital infrastructure. To open the event, please welcome the President of Stratbase ADRi, Professor Victor Dindo Manhit.
Thank you, Orly. Thank you for supporting this virtual business roundtable with your Citizen Watch group. Thank you to all our speakers. And I'd like to welcome our participants, both who registered for the Zoom coverage and even for those who are in Facebook trying to watch us. Allow me to give a little background about our virtual business roundtable. Before pandemic, we've always had this business roundtable quarterly, discussing with other leading figures, leading personalities in business, and even with business associations. But we said we cannot stop. As pandemic went on, we turned it into a virtual business roundtable, but actually it's a virtual business town hall discussion because we want a broad-based participation in our quarterly event that focuses on business, investments, and generating development and prosperity in our country. Today, we'd like to focus on how do we promote broad-based prosperity through digital infrastructure. And allow me to share some slides that we track. And our first slide, I wanted to share what we track post-election with our research and intelligence team under the Stratbase group. We see ourselves facing risks in 8 geopolitical and economic risks, but we always see risks as opportunities. At the core of this are the economic consequences brought about by the pandemic that continues to be a challenge to the Philippine economy. Side by side with this is what we saw as a digital transformation that we have seen in Philippine society across demographics. So allow us to share data. We're proud of the data that we invest in, national surveys that we do quarterly, even monthly during the election season. But in our last data, the core of the national concerns of Filipinos across demographics and geographic area is the issue of inflation. And we just saw the latest numbers yesterday. The best way to deal with inflation, even for people at the lower level of social economic profile in the Philippines, is having jobs that provides better wage, that will help them reduce poverty and deal with rising costs of living. At a more personal level, when we asked this last June, at the core of our people's concern, because with national concern, we track what our people, what the Filipino people want their government to do. With this question, when we translate this in different dialects across the nation, jobs after illnesses, after staying healthy is very important because it's a source of income. But to have that well-paying job or source of income or livelihood, you need skills. And you need business, you need at every level, from micro, small, medium enterprise, to transform ourselves into this new digital society that we have transitioned to, given the reality of pandemic. As we reflect back on actual government data, what it tells us really is As we lag behind agriculture, that means rural folks continue to be challenged by growth. We need industry and services to grow stronger. We need manufacturing to grow stronger. We need services. And at the core of that today, again, is infrastructure. And maybe more specifically, digital infrastructure. In Strat-based ADR Institute, we have always challenged growth that is jobless in nature. That's why when we see the number of Filipinos, though it has improved according to government, but still at 2.99 million jobless Filipinos, and even 5.89 million suffering from underemployment. What I see in this data, if I put a human face in this data, is that Filipinos feel uncertain about their livelihood. How can we help businesses grow again that will provide jobs for the Filipino people? That's why we have always advocated in our institute investment-led growth that create jobs. At the start of the administration of President Bongbong Marcos Jr., we compared it on the top issues 6 years ago with President Duterte. And it remains the same. The issue of the economy, 6 years after, continues to be a challenge to Filipinos. Why so? Even higher in terms of dealing with the high cost of living. That means we have not really shifted the direction of the country, given the opportunity to grow our country, even before the pandemic, through investment-led, job-creating growth. But it reminded me of 2 data sets that we had at the start of the election season, after the filing of candidacy. How people see themselves finding jobs, uplifting their lives, and expanding livelihood opportunities. And they see the private sector as key to this. And even 28% saying we need to improve the quality of access to digital services. Our earlier survey done with our other partner, not Pulse Asia, but Social Weather Station, speaks of 82% of Filipinos. And we're running this data again this month with Pulse Asia. Sees the collaboration with the private sector as very important in sustaining growth of the Philippine economy. They see 8 out of 10 Filipinos believe that the private sector should be encouraged to invest in public infrastructures. And more specifically, we need government to listen to us. That as private sector plays this role, we need government to also invest, more specifically with digital infrastructure. I've always spoken of the opportunities whereby technology has shaped our lives, fast-tracked it maybe because of the pandemic. Look at that number of 89% across demographic, across geographic area, even those with limited education. Very important is for government and the private sector to collaborate. I would say this morning, the need for creating a more competitive digital ecosystem. And at the core of that is digital infrastructures as prerequisite for growth and access to emerging digital technologies and innovation for inclusive growth. Public-private partnership is a key tool, model, that could be an integral component of growth equation. As no single player, even the state itself, possess all the necessary resources for development. A month ago, we wrote, part of our research team, which spoke of the need to revitalize the strategies for long-term economic growth. And we continue to offer our voice, a strong voice, how the private sector, through our nation's challenges, especially during the pandemic, even pre-pandemic, even the past administration, not only Duterte's, but the private sector has consistently demonstrated its capacity as a prime mover, not only in innovation and the delivery of goods and services, but also in creating value in the lives of its stakeholders. Private sector creates jobs. With job creation, it alleviates poverty. And it even promotes sustainability as a core principles of their business decisions, business direction. Government must do its share. That's why in my August 9th commentary, in my weekly commentary in the business world, it comes out every Wednesday. I speak of an investment-led, export-oriented, manufacture and agricultural approaches offer viable and effective solutions to economic problems. But at the core is digitalization. And we hear that from government leaders since the new administration came in June 30. It's a critical enabler for recovery and sustainable growth. But for it to succeed, collaboration with private sector and civil society and government needs to happen. And the challenges born by the digitalization process could be converted into inclusive development opportunities for the Filipino people, for the Filipino nation, as we would like to become a new power player in the global digital economy. Again, thank you for participating. Good morning. Let's have a nice, substantive discussion, strategic discussion of promoting broad-based prosperity through digital infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Professor Gindo Manhit, our president at Strat-based ADR Institute. That was a very enlightening situation and the context that we have here in the Philippines, and especially the strategic impact or urgency for our digital transformation as a country. Thank you very much.
Thank
For
you.
our thank you very much. By the way, I'm Orly Oxales. I'm the convener of Citizen Watch Philippines. I shall be moderating the program today. I'm very glad and very thankful for ADRi to partner in this very important event, which for us as a consumer advocate is a very important advocacy that we feel is very important to all consumers and even all industries and all sectors of society. For our first speaker for this morning, I'd like to welcome what I believe is a very important expert in terms of enlightening us about digital technology and innovations. He is a manager and head of Globe Telecom's Network Technology Innovations. And with over 9 years of experience working at Globe Telecom, he is the lead design engineer for the first 5G in the Philippines and currently manages both technical and business readiness of the company's intelligent solution initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Engineer Derek Dimla, the manager and head of Network Technology Innovations of Globe Telecom. Welcome,
Hi.
sir.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I hope now you can see my presentation now and you can hear me clearly. So it's good morning and good day to all, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really excited to share with you some of the development and on accelerating the economic growth. And whether you're listening from Facebook or joining us here in Zoom, I hope everything is well with you. So today it is my pleasure to be with you virtually in this discussion on a broad-based prosperity through digital infrastructure. And I'm amazed by the numbers that were shared by Prof. Dindo. No? And for this morning, let me share with you some of the viewpoints on a tech-driven development to accelerate economic growth. Sukant Ratnakar, the founder and CEO of Quantras Inc., known for using their perspective thinking as anesthesia for change. That means that you are reducing the resistance for change initiatives. Once said that our success is directly proportional to our ability to understand, adopt, and integrate new technology and new technologies into our work. Across many years, from the early Industry 1.0 up until today, in the age of Industry 4.0, this quote finds itself again and again relevant, and through more so in the digital information age, wherein there's already a convergence of data, information, and communications technology all in one. The importance of digital technology and ICT was highlighted, and it took a global pandemic to make us realize of how crucial and important digital technology and ICT in our lives. And the impact has become our daily mantra of thinking how and when will this end? And 2 years have passed. We did learn from it. And it became our daily exercise. It became the Filipinos' lifeline and allowed businesses to continue despite the lockdowns. To give you more insights, let's
With
watch this
Globe
video.
Business, ang galing ko, may igagaling pa. Dating mano-mano, isang click na lang.
Na-deliver na po, Chef. It's good on time.
Lahat ng kailangan ko to break through is within my reach.
Iha, sigurado ako, proud na proud siya.
At kahit narating na lahat to, di pa rin kami tumitigil sa paghahanap kung ano ang susunod.
Eto, kaya?
Kaya, kasi I have the best partner.
Atin ang tuloy-tuloy na success. Globe Business.
Your banking and payment transactions through online applications were made easier. Your consultation and conferences, everything done online, and true enough, almost everything was done online, be it your education, your programs, your works, your businesses. Thus, going digital brings new relevant practices in today's modern world. The better normal, should I say. And digital technology proved itself as valuable tool for businesses, or for business recovery and resiliency. And Globe Business, with its suite of solutions, allowed MSMEs operations to digital space. Take note that the MSMEs are a crucial part of the Philippine economy, constituting over 99% of businesses in the country and providing employment to 63% of country's workforce, which is relevant to the numbers that were mentioned during the presentation of Prof. Dindo, that people would need to have and secure their job. To name some, under the Globe suites of business solutions, the fiber connectivity, the communications tool, the payroll solutions, even the logistics trackers and learning sessions were made easy for MSMEs via digital technology. Little did we notice that this would go the cloud, meaning your storage, your compute and process solution at a push button, connecting to APIs and linkages we never knew would overtake us. But often when we hear digital solutions or digital transformation, we tend to visualize and imagine these high-tech infrastructures. We hear buzzwords like IoT or the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, the AR, VR, or the XR, the immersive experience, 5G, intelligent cities, and even the Industry 4.0. These all gives us excited and at the same time concerned about our country's adoption of this high-tech infra. how these so complex words can be integrated in this simple way of life, as it has to do with our cultural behavior. However, it's not just about high-tech digital infrastructure and high-speed connectivity. There's really more to this. Tech-driven developments require several key components, namely the infrastructure, the digitalization or the digital transformation, innovation, and also not to forget the talent development that would also give us a responsive and relevant, encouraging policy framework. While we focus on digital connectivity in digital build programs, there's also a counterpart to it, and that is to upgrade. Digital infra also need skills upgrade and talent retooling, so its functions and capabilities can be translated in ways it can be understood by non-tech people. And so that digitalization without its purpose will also lose its value. If it's not solving anything and not as inclusive as it should be, innovation will take a longer time to be in. Examples of digitalization would be e-governance, simple, that is easy to use and intuitive applications, process automations, and even the data privacy and cybersecurity. Of course, for innovation, we need to find and dig deep on the problems we need to address and the predicaments of our business partners. It has to be purpose-driven. It has to be a whole development of ecosystem and inclusive that serves the needs of all. For Ayala Group, enabling a tech-driven development in digital age goes beyond providing connectivity. It is actually engaging partnership, building and developing ecosystem, and purpose-driven inclusive innovation. The network layer, consisting of access layer, the devices, and the service platforms layers, are critical infrastructure that is the foundation of the 3 I's of tech-driven development: the infrastructure, the innovation, and inclusivity. Supporting the delivery of comprehensive suite of services, all intended to serve the needs of the Filipino and the nation itself, with the sole purpose of improving the life of each in every aspect of life, be it in education, healthcare, transportation, and even the citizens' safety. So if you could try to break it down, there can be a lot. There can be for applications and platforms for health, addressing and connecting health trackers, wearables, emergency response. And for education, we can put learning management system or an interactive board for physical and virtual attendees, the adaptive learning, understanding the behavior of the new students now. And even for utilities, we can have the use of intelligent meters, the use of power meters can be integrated into platforms so that it can read continuously and measure the behavior of our usage in terms of power and water consumption. We can also be in mobile wallet, which is already a success with GCash. I can barely remember when I was with the Globe in 2011. I was an intern, and the name of GCash back then was PowerPay. And now look at us. We are using this tool to engage with our transaction online and even sometimes in our local stores. So our stores now are also using QR codes for payment systems. In summary, we are in the digital information age, and tech-driven development is key to economic growth, economic recovery and growth. And of course, that in that data, informations, and communications technology all in one, it needs to be processed and compute for businesses to somehow understand what is the current situation and from there decide with the data that is present. Tech-driven economic growth is also anchored in digitalization. Another pillar to look into is infra, where in connectivity, we bring more than connectivity and digital service platforms. which is still the foundational build to any and all the digitalization programs and initiatives. But connectivity is not all about speed. It has to be consistent, it has to be reliable, it has to be secure, and of course, available and accessible for all. Technology need not to be the latest. We can use whatever that is existing, and we can take advantage of those technologies to progress whatever we have in mind in terms of addressing business problems. Purpose-driven innovation becomes the key to unlocking and exploiting the true value of connectivity. Without the value or what it delivers, then connectivity would just be a channel for us. And infrastructure and technology would also help us bring efficiencies and make those efforts as simple as they can be. Other than connectivity, infrastructure, technology, and innovation, there is this people RWA. That is the people readiness, the people willingness, and the ability. When the pandemic hit us, we're not ready, but we were able to adapt. We were able to learn. We were able to understand what needs to be done. And there's also willingness for people to learn because there's no other way to do it except that way. And in line with that, in parallel to that, we need to make the service available because that's where the ability comes in. Without the connectivity, without the availability and accessibility, then we won't be able to do it at all. And as the society continues to adapt to more digital services, it is equally important to highlight the online safety, cybersecurity, and data privacy, wherein we are putting all our efforts and awareness programs to let people know that we should be vigilant in transacting online, because it is the network or the internet is vulnerable to attacks, and we need to be vigilant and we should protect our data at all costs. That's why it is really important to highlight the safety, the security, and the data privacy. And lastly, digital transformation and transition to a digital nation will need the relevant framework, policies, and partnership to happen at the right pace. So we need the help of our LGUs, the different stakeholders, and the private companies, the private sector, all in one to collaborate and bring those policies as industry practices so that we can develop even more solutions for all. Finally, I share with you what Ms. Jillian C. York mentioned, the Director for International Freedom Expression Electronic Frontier Foundation. She mentioned we can simply rely on technology to mitigate the harms of technology. Rather, we must look at our educational systems, our political and economic system. Therein lie the solutions. If we see the problem that's present in those existing pillars, then it is a call for us to start thinking, how can I add value? Again, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Engineer Dimla. Very interesting insights, especially, well, you're correct. We are virtually doing everything, almost everything online. And I totally agree that we need technology to be available. We need the connectivity that is reliable, secure, and available, and most of all, accessible to all. Thank you very much, Engineer Dimla. For our next speaker, I'd like to introduce Mr. John Gonzalez. He is the first Vice President and Head of Enterprise Digital Solutions and IT Business Consulting at PLDT. He is also the Chief Commercial Officer of EPLDT, the ICT arm of EPLDT Enterprise. Mr. Gonzalez has held various executive positions at PLDT and its subsidiaries for over 9 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. John R. Gonzalez, the first Vice President, Enterprise Digital Solutions, PLDT, and Chief Commercial Officer of EPLDT. Welcome, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, and good day, everyone. First of all, we at PLDT Smart and EPLDT would like to thank Strat-based ADR Institute in partnership with Citizen Watch Philippines for organizing this event. It is indeed an honor to be with you today to share our insights on how we continually serve to improve the quality of life of the Filipino people and how digital services can help further transform our country's competitiveness in the global economy. Technology and a robust digital infrastructure have become key to the Philippines' economic and pandemic recovery, and in driving the country towards long-term competitiveness. As the nation's largest fully integrated telco, PLDT takes pride in leading the country's digital advancement. We offer a wide range of telecommunications and digital services across the country, built on the most extensive fiber optic backbone serving both fixed and wireless service networks. Inspired by our company's mission, which is to lead and inspire Filipinos to create a better tomorrow, it is our sworn duty to support the digital aspirations of our customers, be it consumer or enterprises. Now that almost everything has shifted online, digital consumption and demand for improved remote services continue to spike. And such, the Philippines will need world-class digital infrastructure to keep pace. And we at the PLDT Group are committed to powering the digital future of the country. PLDT's international submarine and terrestrial cable network comprises of 17 international cables, including the Jupiter cable system, which we launched last July. Already ahead in terms of international capacities among Philippine telcos, Jupiter will triple PLDT's international capacity to about 60 terabits per second, further cementing its lead in the industry and reinforcing its commitment to driving the country's digital capabilities forward. The 14,000-kilometer Jupiter cable system is the newest international gateway connecting the Philippines directly from PLDT's cable landing station in Daet, Camarines Norte, to Japan and the US West Coast. PLDT's investment in Jupiter responds to the rapidly growing requirements for digital services and next-generation technologies, and supports data-driven industries, particularly those with global operations and high bandwidth demands, such as the BPOs, multinational companies, and global hyperscalers. Submarine fiber optic cables are among the most critical components of the Internet's infrastructure, serving as a backbone connecting countries, carrying communications, and enabling digital services across the globe. Strengthening undersea cable links, especially those landing in the US and Japan, is crucial as the bulk of the Internet content and services being accessed by Filipinos, which are mostly offered by global hyperscalers, are from servers in the US, and material portion of demand for content is served in Japan. With the activation of Jupiter, there are now 11 international submarine cable systems connecting to the Philippines. To elevate this further, our Asia Direct cable and Apricot cable investments are also set to go live in the next 2 years. PLDT's investments in Jupiter will help boost the country's international capacity, boost global trade of digital services, drive our digital economy, and at the same time increase internet speeds and reliability for the Filipinos. This will help make the Philippines become a key player in the global hyperscale arena. To help fortify the nation's spot as a major regional hyperscale hub, PLDT, through our ICT subsidiary EPLDT, is further investing in ramping up the total capacity of its VITRO data centers. Currently operating 10 VITRO data centers, EPLDT has thousands of ready racks already in service and is planning to expand further the capacity of 3 of its major VITRO data centers located in Makati, Parañaque, and Clark. An 11th one being developed in Santa Rosa, Laguna is purposely built to be hyperscale grade and is set to go live next year. This will be the first of a series of data center builds totaling a power capacity of 100 megawatts. VITRO Santa Rosa will have an initial capacity of 36 megawatts delivered by a 60 megawatt substation within our compound to reduce points of failures in transmission. VITRO Santa Rosa will host the richest IP ecosystems courtesy of PHIX and VIX infrastructure to maintain domestic traffic, lowering unwanted latencies, and improve the end-user experience. Our data center solutions can drive business benefits for small to large enterprises. To allow businesses to accelerate their digital transformation goals and provide next-level customer experience beyond connectivity, PLDT has teamed up with Nokia to launch our IoT platform, the Internet of Possibilities. IoT is a technological revolution with immense potential to improve the way we do things and will further complement PLDT's already extensive solutions. IoT-enabled solutions are enabling enterprises to transform business processes with more digitally enabled capabilities while identifying and creating more opportunities for technology-enabled transformations across the entire value chain, leading to improved customer experience. Over 15,000 SIMs have been onboarded since we launched the Internet of Possibilities, or IOP, platform last year. We have established use cases in asset monitoring, telemetry, mobile scanners, vending machines, and POS. In every discovery sessions, we unfold interesting new cases such as common tower monitoring, smart elevators, advanced self-service kiosks, smart buses, smart lights, and even smart agriculture. IoT, along with our world-class infrastructure and cutting-edge digital solutions, will help pave the way for Philippines to become a nation of smart cities. The PLDT Group takes pride in leading the nation's digital advancement made possible through our partnerships with the government. We have been actively collaborating with various government agencies to connect more Filipinos nationwide. With supporting education as one of our core advocacies, the entire group of PLDT, we are equipping various academic institutions across the nation with technology solutions to support their e-learning activities. In June, we supported the rollout of free public Wi-Fis in 220 state universities and colleges in the Philippines in partnership with the Department of Information and Communication Technology, or DICT, and the United Nations Development Program. To make sure that the education continued even at the height of the pandemic, PLDT, through its wireless unit Smart Communications, has teamed up with the Department of Education for a deal providing 1 million teachers with SIM cards preloaded with Smart Giga study plans to make their daily teaching tasks easier. To address gaps in resource and facilities in geographically isolated areas, PLDT recently held a cable landing ceremony in Santa Fe Municipality in Bantayan Island, ensuring enhanced connectivity in LGU residents and businesses. A submarine cable also landed in Camotes Island in June, connecting it to the Mandaue City and Ormoc City. These submarine cables links fortify existing fiber links and enhance the resiliency of PLDT's network by providing alternative routes for data traffic, ensuring connectivity for customers and enterprises. To help achieve the common goal of empowering the Filipinos, PLDT was fortunate to be one of many organizations that are now part of the Private Sector Advisory Council, with PLDT as member of the Digital Infrastructure Group, providing regular policy recommendations to Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. We support the government in digitizing the country, including the delivery of government services. PLDT is pushing for the streamlining of government permitting guidelines for telecommunications infrastructure, as this will help operators like PLDT and Smart in their continued nationwide network build-out to support the connectivity needs of Filipinos in the new normal. Our recommendations are to simplify and standardize the process of permit issuance that will trim down the lead time from 8 months to 1 month. And we believe that the issuance of an executive order to make the effectivity of the Anti-Red Tape Authority Joint Memorandum Circular will harmonize the local government codes regarding telco permits. To ensure easy and convenient public transactions with the government, PLDT supports the acceleration of the national ID registration through a public-private partnership. We support the Council's recommendation of adopting blockchain's provenance-based validation technology, wherein the potential of national ID can be maximized. The use of blockchain may also be applied to the e-government services such as customs and tariff declarations, electronic voting, land registration, certifications, and credentials issuance. PLDT believes that the government can benefit from scaled-up e-government services. E-government services can improve the current siloed cloud services rolled out in various government agencies, creating a sovereign community cloud catering only to government entities sharing standard best practices for applications will greatly benefit us. Public agencies, particularly government financial institutions or GFIs, need protection from cyber attacks. As such, PLDT has called for the enhancement of the predictive and responsive cybersecurity capabilities of GFIs. PLDT also supports the continued enablement and training for cybersecurity professionals and the insertion of cybersecurity curriculum in academia to expand and sustain demands for cybersecurity practitioners in the country. Agriculture is a significant part of our Philippine economy and needs modernization. As food security is threatened by climate change and extreme weather conditions, implementing smart farming through IoT will help farmers reduce generated waste and enhance productivity with efficiency. Top agricultural IoT opportunities that can modernize agriculture in the country include precision farming, agriculture drones, livestock monitoring, and smart greenhouses. Bolstering PLDT's commitment to support the country's digital transformation is the company's sustained investments in its network. Network-related initiatives made up the bulk of the 89 billion spent in 2021. This brings PLDT's total capex spend over the last 10 years to 518.5 billion pesos. We are honored to be part of an esteemed body such as the Private Sector Advisory Council and present our recommendations together with other organizations to improve the country's digital infrastructure. We look forward to continuing working with the government to achieve our common goals of empowering Filipinos and supporting the country's economic ambition. On behalf of the entire PLDT group, I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude to StratBase for allowing us to share our initiatives to create a digitized and competitive Philippines. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. John Gonzalez of PLDT. It's really, really very, very inspiring to hear how PLDT is taking the initiative in investing hugely, 518 billion in capital expenses to really develop our digital infrastructure. I totally agree that world-class infrastructure is what we need to be competitive in this world. And I really like your idea of building an internet of possibilities, your initiatives, especially in education, which we need so much, and smart farming, yes, which is very consistent with the president's thrust in modernizing our agriculture to address our food concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
For our next speaker, she is the president and CEO of Aboitiz Infracapital, the infrastructure arm of the Aboitiz Group. She has over 20 years of experience in commercial and investment banking, transaction advisory, and infrastructure. And she was the former executive director of the Public-Private Partnership Center of the Philippines and was the former managing director for PPP advisory at Atkins Acuity. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President and CEO of Aboitiz Infracapital, Ms. Cosette V. Canilao. Welcome.
Thank you, Orly. Good morning, everyone. So if I could start my presentation, it should be a short one. So the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated digital transformation and underscored heavy reliance on digital services as new technologies continue to develop. And heavy reliance on digital services, and we saw that, especially the past 2 years. So as new technologies continue to develop, the reality is that institutions of today and tomorrow need robust capabilities in order to fulfill their purpose and thrive in a digital economy. Digital infrastructure has now become the new utility. People need adequate access to the internet and devices to utilize basic services, get work opportunities, and even learn remotely. We saw a greater adoption of e-commerce during COVID. And according to the International Trade Administration, in 2021 alone, the Philippines e-commerce market sales reached $17 billion, largely contributed by 73 million online active users. It spurred the birth of many small online businesses and prompted existing enterprises to expand online to serve their customers. Today, e-commerce is projected to reach $24 billion with 17% growth through 2025. During the height of the lockdown of the pandemic, fintech emerged and thrived to support households and businesses. Mobility restrictions created a surge in demand for contactless financial services that traditional banking alone could not fulfill. Digital financial services went from nice to have to must have, with most people in the urban areas now using a form of e-wallet or online banking to settle payments with other parties. E-wallet and online banking have made transactions more convenient and seamless, and now people have less apprehensions in using them. Digital banking is now paving the way for better financial inclusion. So the possibilities and opportunities are endless with an enabling digital environment. That is why it is crucial to build firm foundations for the future. Next slide, please. We need to prepare for the evolution of a new generation technologies and make sure proper digital infrastructure in the bigger ecosystem is in place. We also need a strong digital governance framework to invest in quality cybersecurity measures that will ensure people feel and are safe from cybersecurity and data privacy threats. We need to create a conducive environment for online gig workers, emerging technologies, and various players like startup firms and other small and medium enterprises to thrive and compete in a digital economy. The public and private sectors, academe, NGOs, and the wider cyber community need to have a coordinated approach in addressing gaps in this whole ecosystem so we can truly be effective. Digital infrastructure, for one, is the foundation of the digital economy, the passive digital infrastructure. The private sector has been investing heavily on this passive infrastructure, and while it has definitely improved significantly over the last few decades, we are still lagging in terms of tower density or tower per subscriber. For example, we have the lowest in comparison to our peers in the region. Our low tower density results in network congestion, which translates to slower internet speeds and at best, disruptive internet connection at worst. With the government's directive, mobile network operators and internet service providers are now building more carrier-neutral macro towers through independent tower companies. MNOs and ISPs are also deploying small cells attachments that also help boost latency and capacity, meant to work in conjunction with the macro cell towers. These towers and small cell network allow multiple MNOs and ISPs to co-locate in one asset, ultimately saving on cost and fast-tracking the network expansion efforts of the MNOs. We need to do the same for dark fiber. This sets the stage for the public sector to create an even more enabling environment for the private sector to participate in building out this passive digital infrastructure using government assets through PPPs. Further, digitalizing basic government services like one-stop permitting process, social welfare assistance, and national ID registration and use. Digitalization of these services will help eliminate inefficiencies and leakages due to corruption and also fast-track delivery of services. Under the BOT law and its implementing rules and regulations, telecommunications, backbone network, terrestrial, aerial, and space infrastructure, and related service facilities, as well as IT, networks, and database infrastructure, among others, are eligible types of PPP projects. To enjoin private sector and at the same time establish more players to develop the much-needed passive digital infrastructure and digitalization of government services, governments should issue policy directives, effective policy directives, and can offer additional incentives. To reiterate, there's a lot to be excited about in this new era of digital economy. But in order to realize the various opportunities, we must nurture our digital ecosystem by ramping up the country's passive digital infrastructure, by strengthening digital governance, and by enabling the local digital economy. That's the end of my presentation, and thank you. Arlie, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cosette Canilao. Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, digital infrastructure has indeed become the new utility of this era, this new era that we're in. And like myself, fintech really is really a lifesaver. It supported all of our household needs, the businesses, and yes, you're correct that confidence in e-payment technologies, all of these e-wallets has really virtually gone from nothing to everything almost overnight. Yes, we do need a lot of cooperation and coordination in addressing all of these digital infrastructure gaps, such as what you mentioned as lower tower density, and that's really slowing things down. And we need to do that first and work together on that to be able to achieve all the opportunities that digital infrastructures will really offer. Thank you very much. For our next speaker, I'd like to introduce the CEO of Microsoft Philippines. He's previously he was the Senior Vice President of Globe, where he managed the enterprise business. and was the Deputy CEO and Director of Live IT Investments of Ayala Corporation's holding company for its investments in business process outsourcing. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO of Microsoft Philippines, Mr. Peter Maquera. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Orly. Thank you, Dindo. Thank you, Stratbase, for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. It's nice to get updated on what Globe's up to. I would say, I miss a lot of what we were doing there at Globe Telecom back in the day. And nice to hear about PLDT and Aboitiz, what they're doing in digital. John, on PLDT side, I particularly like the phrase Internet of Opportunities. And Cosette, what a big shift where companies like Aboitiz now can participate in, financing and partnering in cell towers and fiber optic cables. I think this is such an encouraging trend of working together in the ecosystem. For my presentation, I'll focus more on solutions rather than digital infrastructure. I'll be quick. I only have 3 priority recommendations. Orly, I think you guys are supporting me on the slides. Could I have the next slide, please? Let me just see here. So I'd like to start with some context. This is the slide that I hate the most. I'd like to share with you guys, and why I hate it is it really shows the economic growth of selected Asia Pacific countries. And what's interesting to me and bothersome to me is that, back, not soon after World War II, around the 1960s, we were one of the wealthiest nations in the region. I think only behind Japan. So fast forward 60 years, Orly, I don't know, is a generation 20 years or is it 30 years? So in a period of not only 2 to 3 generations, we've become the poorest. In terms of GDP per capita, we just got passed by Vietnam and Indonesia, I think, in the last 5 to 10 years. So it's not all bad. I think it's a little bit distorted. What's interesting here is I would say we grow incrementally. So I think in the first half of the year we grew 7.4%. So it's positive in that country. Areas like the United States, China, Japan are all worried about recessions, and we managed to be growing at a fairly strong rate. But what's interesting to me is if you look at the curves of Korea, Indonesia, Vietnam, they're bending the curve, and I think it's it's transformational. So we're incremental, they're transformational, and so Orly, Dindo, I like the challenge of, hey, let's I think, yes, we have these headwinds on things like inflation, and I think our poverty rates dipped a bit during the pandemic. We'll come out of it. We have a lot of strengths, but let's also find this opportunity, I think, to bend the curve. When I was looking at the GDP per capita, when I looked back in the 1960s, so Singapore in 1960, GDP per capita is $428. They've grown 141 times. South Korea was $158. They've grown 200 times. Thailand was at $101. They've grown 71 times. Philippines were at $286. We've only grown 11 times. So that's what I mean about, we're incrementally improving, but certainly not at the pace I think that we have the potential for. But I do have 3 recommendations, not just to get out of the, recover from the pandemic, but perhaps enter our golden era. Next slide, please. So one of the major things, I think, one of the major tailwinds, if you will, or potential tailwinds, is we could potentially enter our demographic window. Right. So we're the 13th most populous country in the world. I think we're the 2nd most populous behind Indonesia in the APAC region. We're a very young population, 25.7 years. And when I say that we're potentially entering our demographic window, it's that period where most of our population are between 15 and 65 years old. So that means most of us can contribute to growth rather than be dependents. This is a very complicated topic, but the interesting one was I was looking at Thailand, and I guess around 1975, we were considered twins, about the same population, about the same income. But look at how they've sped up, and it's interesting. I think their population is only at maybe 70 million. We're 110. Their proportion of 0 to 15 is around 15%. Ours is like 30%. And so I think family planning has to do with it. And I don't know that we'll solve that problem to kind of better balance the fertility rates for the young side of our population, but perhaps digital can increase the productivity and inclusion, so that more and more of us can again contribute to growth. Next slide, please. So, for all of this, for these opportunities for us, for these tailwinds to happen, let me now talk about my priority recommendation number 1. And we've heard it a few times, and it's probably number 1 in everything we do, is digital skilling. Because we believe that digital skilling can bend the curve for faster growth and greater prosperity, like our neighbors in Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and most recently Indonesia and Vietnam. So if you don't mind a little bit of shameless advertising, this happens to be our mission at Microsoft, and it's to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. Next slide, please. So what empowering every person means is that ensuring everyone has the skills, the knowledge, and the opportunity to succeed in the digital economy. So we call this inclusive prosperity. It's about 1 billion of us, or about 12% of us on the planet, have some form of disability. Imagine the potential if we can all participate. Next slide, please. So what we've done at Microsoft in partnership with Department of Education so far, this is an impact just in the last 4 years. So we've skilled 27 million Filipino students. We've skilled over 1 million teachers and educators. We've skilled nearly 50,000 institutions. And a lot of our courseware actually is free. There's so much opportunity for us. And we believe our main limiter will be whether people will have the skills to do the jobs of tomorrow. Next slide, please. So I'm moving on to priority recommendation number 2. And I heard this, I think, from the other presenters as well. We need to support and digitalize our MSMEs, our small businesses. We have 1 million small businesses in this country, and it represents 99.5% of all enterprises, and it employs 63% of the labor force. So if we can digitalize them, what's so important is you're in fact then instilling innovation at the grassroots level. At the moment, a lot of our GDP engine is the big corporates. But if you want it to be pervasive, if you want it to be grassroots, I think we got to go after and support the small businesses. Indonesia is a really interesting model for this. Indonesia has 64 million SMSEs. Today, they're a hotbed of creating digital natives or companies who are born digital. It's interesting in Indonesia is corporations struggle with solving and serving the MSMEs because they're too small. But what's happened is an ecosystem of startups who are digital natives has evolved to actually solve the MSME problems. Today, Indonesia has 10 unicorns, startups that are valued over $1 billion, versus the Philippines, we have 2. But we're getting momentum, right? While they're not unicorns, this is really different. You didn't see this before, 5 years ago. Today in the Philippines, while not unicorns, there are 5 digital natives with valuations of more than $100 million. But Vietnam has 8. Thailand has 11. Next slide, please. But, we can't do this alone. Closing the skills gap, supporting the MSMEs, and driving an inclusive economic recovery will continue to require partnerships to bring technology and people together. So this requires a partnership between companies and government agencies. So priority recommendation number 3, digitalized government. And I love how John at PLDT spent a lot of time on this. We believe that pervasive digital adoption and services will be driven by government policies. Next slide, please. We do have an encouraging start with government embracing digital. I think Arlie, Dindo, you guys were the ones who pointed out that President Marcos Jr. Has spoken more about IT and digitalization during his sauna than any of his predecessors. Personally, I've met maybe 5 agencies in just in the last 2 weeks, and digitalization is top of mind for all of them. And 3 of those 5 were even talking about, really advanced applications like blockchain. Maybe about a year ago, I guess, during the elections, we partnered with CNN to hold the presidential debates with over 5 million viewers. So more and more people can be aware. Doing quite a bit of work with the Philippine judiciary. They've conducted nearly 1 million virtual hearings through Teams. And what's transpired is over 100,000 persons. They call them persons PDLs, persons deprived of liberty. Imagine if you're locked down and you can't have court cases. You might not be guilty, but you'll be locked up. But 100,000 has been released who otherwise would have continued to be detained. So it's interesting how digital is, it's actually quite relevant across for all of us and just about every organization. Next slide, please. So let us continue to drive digital intensity. We're starting to see this all around us. This means internet for all, finance for all. I think Gcash, Maya, bravo to you guys. Healthcare for all, Consulta MD, MWell of MPIC, bravo to you guys. Access and affordability for everything and for everyone. Let me close by the next slide. It's actually a video. If you could play the video, please.
My name is Grover.
Sean. My name is Ian.
I'm Taylor.
My name is Owen, and I am 9.5 years old.
I only have 1.
And yeah, I love video games, my friends, my family, and again, video games.
Whenever I play it, it makes me feel happy.
The fun that you get to have with connecting with your friends.
You make your own rules?
It's his way of interacting with his friends when he can't physically otherwise do it.
When I'm playing with a regular controller, there's some things that don't work for me.
It's difficult for me to use both joysticks and the D-pad at the exact same time.
And it just slowed me down a bunch more while other people were like...
She's never had the freedom to play at the level she knows she could.
I never thought it was unfair. I just thought, hey, this is the way it is and it's not going to change.
What I like about the adaptive controller is that now everyone can play.
I don't even have to look at the controller and just be like looking at the screen like, hey, yep.
You never want your kid to feel like an outsider or an other.
One of the biggest fears early on is, how will Owen be viewed by the other kids? He's not different when he plays.
It's a little challenging, but that's the whole point of gaming. I can hit the buttons just as fast as they can.
And I think I can crush my friends.
No matter how your body is or how fast you are, you can play. It's a really good thing to have in this world.
Thank you for that. So for us, empowering everyone, that's our North Star: diversity and inclusion, inclusive prosperity. It's our North Star in developing our solutions. If we all play, we all win. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Wow, that was a very inspiring video on how technology can really be an enabler. If technology can enable those kids, what more for us who have all of these abilities, these skills, what more for government? I really love those recommendations you gave about the need for digital skilling. That's very important. Education sector is very important for that. The digitalization of MSMEs, yes, 90%, over 90% of our economy is about MSMEs. And really, we're just seeing our MSMEs just scratching the surface of technology right now. And we need to, the more we help them digitize and really wield the power of digitalization, the faster our economy would recover. And of course, we all must work together, all sectors, to especially help government digitize, because government will really drive us in terms of policy and directions, and really enabling the whole of our society. Yes, and yes, our advocacy, we share that advocacy of providing digital for all. That digital intensity concept that you have, we totally support that. And the more we give access to all about digital, and the more people are enabled and skilled to wield that power, the better for us in this global economy. Thank you very much, Peter. Our next speaker, I'm glad to have with us as a speaker for our next topic about the need for connectivity in advancing the digital economy. He is the head of connectivity and access policy for APAC of Meta, or Facebook. Prior to joining Meta, he was the International Communication Union, or ITU, area representative for Southeast Asia and other member states in Asia and the Pacific. He has an extensive background in spectrum auctions, technology implementation, and ICT policymaking and regulations. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the head of connectivity and access policy of APAC Meta, Dr. Ismail Shah. Welcome, Dr. Shah.
Thank you so much. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, you can.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank the Strat-based ADR Institute and the Citizen Watch and all the esteemed speakers in this panel. It's really an honor to be here. And I have been in my previous jobs. I have worked in Philippines, did many issues, worked on many issues related to policies and regulations, and in the cellular sector, and also in the digital innovation ecosystem. So very pleased to be here again, although it's online, but I hope to be there in person also. So I have modified the title because I thought it's very obvious that the connectivity is a necessity or necessary requirement for advancing digital economy. So I have taken the liberty to modify the title a little and changed it to the enhanced role of connectivity in advancing the digital economy, because I believe that there is digital economy, we cannot have it unless we have connectivity. So the need is there. It is the enhanced role that we are actually looking at as we move into the digital economy and overall digital transformation. So if you look at the digital economy, whatever is happening is, whether it's buying and selling, whether it's apps, whether they're government services and all, they rely on high-speed connectivity. And Facebook or Meta now has taken many initiatives in this regard, especially in the MSME sector, and also in the connectivity sector, that I would like to mention and talk about the enhanced role, and then try to have the some conclusions or suggestions out of these experiences that we have. So as far as the MSMEs are concerned, we have looked at a survey where the 71%, and this is a fact that was alluded by our earlier speakers also, that there has been a 71% increase in the use of social media platforms since COVID-19, and the 95% actually of these users, also those who were using Facebook, have reported that they were able to build awareness and attract new customers. And 70% reported that they were able to sell new products and services through social media platforms. So these are the kind of things that are happening using these platforms, such as Facebook, that they are contributing into the digital economy. However, there are challenges also, and one of the biggest challenge that was reported is the internet access and data availability, and in order for the online tools to be used. So there is a greater need in having the policies and programs so that the internet become more available, more stable, and is able to support those in the rural areas, and so that they can not only use internet but adopt it for the services that I just mentioned. So moving on, what has been the impact in Philippines as far as the Facebook platform is concerned? We have been able to train 54,000 MSME trains in 64 provinces, and this was one of the programs. And another program we have, the She Means Business, which is for the female entrepreneurs, and there we had this program which was viewed by 1.5 plus million viewers. So moving to the exact topic of today, the connectivity actually is at the heart of everything, including Meta's mission, Facebook's mission of giving people the power to build community and to bring the world closer together. So what are we doing in this sense, and what is actually required to be done in general? So we are investing in the network in the form of cache servers that will improve the experience of the users, and that also saves on the international bandwidth that is so precious. Similarly, to bring in more people to the internet, we have initiatives like text-only Facebook, and then other variants of that known as Discover, and other programs that we have launched, and they are always in partnership with the local telecom operators such as Globe, Smart, and D2. Similarly, we are also investing along with partners, and this is a very major investment on the submarine or subsea cables that is very essential for providing additional international bandwidth. And there is a terrestrial portion also to this project, where we are investing in a cable that is actually passing through Philippines. So the question now is, yes, connectivity, everyone know that we need to have the connectivity that's essential for the digital economy, advancing the digital economy, the overall digital transformation. But what are the requirements for the networks of the future? What is there in the future that is coming up? So we see that from our point of view, that the internet itself is evolving So for example, if you go back to 1990s and look at the internet, probably no one could have imagined what could happen over the next 20 or 30 years. Similarly, we believe that the internet will transform into something which is called, not it's just not us, but many other platforms are working on it. That's the metaverse. That will actually change the way trade, interaction, and other functions happen, and that will happen in a virtual world, which the kind of which we have in the real world. And studies have shown that this will not only contribute to the digital economy significantly, but will also have enhanced requirements on connectivity. So the topic of my presentation is not about metaverse, but for those who would like to have a look at that, they can visit this site that I have provided the link for. But what is the requirement for the future applications, future use cases, and the future the digital economy related initiatives? What we need to do is that we need to have a look at connectivity from an end-to-end point of view. So we need to have a holistic approach towards the networks, which actually, if you start from the user point of view, it starts with the devices. So we need to have all these new devices. So far what we are used to are the smartphones, but there are laptops and newer devices, the AR, VR devices are coming up. And then comes the last mile, which in this case is kind of the first mile, which is how these devices would connect to the internet. So in general, there are two ways: Wi-Fi, if you have a Wi-Fi network available, or the cellular network, 3G, 4G, and now 5G technologies. And then we have the core network, which is also a very important part of the whole equation, that also has to be modernized so that it can support all these latest requirements, including something that I'll allude to, which is the latency. And then of course we have the internet, which is where we have different parts. The subsea part is subsea cables, the backhaul, all these other parts are there, and we need to have focus on and that part, make the processes easy and so on. And then of course if you are working with the Meta application, then it will go to the Meta data center. If it's some other application, then it will go there. But we need to have a look at the end-to-end network holistically. So what are the kind of requirements that are coming up? So as we move, and I agree with some of the speakers that we need to have at least some form of connectivity. Yes, that's today. We need to connect the people so that they can at least start the basic things, but they also need to quickly move into the future and have this more immersive services and experience. So what's happening today is that we are able to tolerate a delay, a latency, and usually the bandwidth requirement from one end to the other is about 5 megabits per second for the applications that we have today. But as we move into the future, this requirement will become more stringent, and this is because of the new type of connectivity that we would like to have. And here I would like to just to give you an example. Like right now, one of the main activity that is happening over our platform and others, as far as digital commerce is concerned, is buying and selling of real world objects, real world products. Like you want to buy a dress, you want to buy a computer, you want to buy other things, even groceries, they are happening online. But they do not give you a real life experience. For example, it is not the same as if you go to the store, try out the different dresses, choose, and then you buy one. Similarly for other products. So in the future, you would be able to, all these buying and selling will move to the virtual world, and the consumers would be able to go to different stores, see the equipment, and even try it out in the virtual world. And even in cases they can bring in the virtual world to their homes, try it in their homes, see how it looks, and then actually buy those kind of equipment. So that is just one use case. and it will also transform education, more immersive education, similarly surgery, similarly training of doctors and so on. So that will increase the requirement on the network, and the delay as well as the data rate would increase, and we estimate, and this estimate is actually going to enhance even further as we move to less than 30 millisecond delay and 25 megabits per second of data rate or bandwidth. So that's one part, which is the reduction of the latency. Similarly, there will be more symmetric bandwidth. That means that if you're working on application where you're sending data and also receiving data, that you need a channel, a connectivity which is symmetric. So that means if you have a download connectivity of 25 megabits per second, you also need to have a 25 megabits per second of uploading or the reverse link connectivity, or from the mobile or the device to the network. And finally, we will also need to have a more consistent quality of experience, because this is what the consumers, the users of the network would demand, that the quality remains consistent. It's not that it degrades and then it comes back, and then it degrades and it comes back. They want the applications and the usages would be such that if you're performing certain critical things, that there has to be a consistent performance. So all these requirements are there for the future. So before I go to the thank you slide, I would have some suggestions that that I believe we can draw from these presentations and the one that I gave. First of all, when you think of the connectivity, we should think of end to end, which will involve the subsea cables, which involve the last mile, which is the spectrum, whether that is for Wi-Fi, whether that is for 5G, whether that is for other technologies. How do you connect your Wi-Fi to the central place? Do you have fiber to the home? Or how do you connect the base station to the central station? Do you have fiber to the tower? Similarly, what are the issues that are faced when you try to have a fiber optic connectivity to the home? What are the right-of-way issues, the last mile issues? So these are very important to think about, and here you have to have the whole of the government approach, otherwise these issues would not be resolved. Because when you're talking about subsea cable, lots of permissions, lots of agencies involved, and lots of processes. Now there is an opportunity for Philippines. It is located very, very strategically, especially from the subsea cable point of view. So there is an urgent need to act quickly to capitalize on this opportunity and enhance the bandwidth and the termination of cables into Philippines. That's very, very important from these are both important from the connectivity point of view. Now the next thing is, what do you do using this connectivity? And I know that this will not happen in one day, so this process will continue together. We need to support the MSMEs, which was actually already highlighted as the main contributor, one of the main contributors towards the economy of Philippines. That will also require enhancing the digital skills of the people in general, and then specific group of people that we need to target. And the last two recommendations that I would have from my side is to have the enabling policies. None of these things would be possible unless we have enabling policies from the government, and then those enabling policies are supplemented by efficiencies in actually implementing those policies. So I'll stop here and I'll thank you all for listening. This is my email address if you would like to talk to me further on any of these issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ismail Shah. Thank you very much for gracing us here during this occasion. Yeah, I totally agree that totally holistic approach is needed for network readiness, especially if we're going to look at the future of the internet. You mentioned about metaverse. It's a very exciting technology of Facebook that can be very, very what we call this, it's going to be revolutionary. And you mentioned some of the potentials of the metaverse, of really changing the way we do things, and virtually having that same life experience virtually, and things on how it will actually change the way we do business and communicating. It's very interesting how you pointed out certain challenges, of how we should need to reduce latency, symmetric bandwidth, and how we need to have consistent quality of experience across the board. Um, um, we do agree that there needs to be we need to think end to end in terms of connectivity, and that there are so many issues involved in building our digital infrastructure that needs not just a whole of government, but really a whole society approach. And we need to capitalize on all of these opportunities, especially with one of Meta's initiatives in improving our cable connectivity with that cable network that's being built. And the last note you mentioned about enabling policies, which actually will be the first question I have as we go into our next portion, which is an open forum. We have time right now. I think we're doing good time. We still have good time to have an open discussion of questions that have came in. I have a whole list here, and I'd start off with the issue that was last mentioned by Dr. Shah. It's about enabling policies. I'd like to ask our panelists. This has actually been a common theme or a common concern from all the speakers, of the need of an enabling environment that will just actually push all of these invite investments that we need to build all of these digital infrastructures to close these gaps that we have. From your point of view, what do you think are policy reforms that you would like to see that government prioritize during this administration? We're starting Congress. We just started Congress. It's already starting of the budget season. And from your point of view, from your certain organizations, what are the gaps you see, and what policies do you think should be supported or is still needed? May I ask our guest from Globe Telecom, Mr. Derek?
Yeah, so regarding the gaps, our ICT industry, and in particular the telco industry, are covered by the very old laws and the policies that are no longer responsive in today's digital information age. As an example, I think these are the Radio Control Act, which was the RA 3846, that was promulgated last November 11, 1931, way older than me, and even the RA 7925, the Philippine Telecommunications Act, that was promulgated last March 1, 1995. So these laws are in need of a review and update to adopt today's ICT environment, and of course its requirements. The current national broadband plan from 2017 to 2022, I think, is also a need of a review and an update. Top of mind for the next broadband plan should consider the following. Number one should be the update on the 2017 National Broadband Plan to adopt the Digital Build program to include the government building and the national broadband network to complement the private sector's investment in connectivity, especially in the GIDAS area or the geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. And second would be the making permanent in streamlining of permits for telcos and ICT industries under the Bayanihan 2 law, and continue to remove the permitting and licensing obstacles for telco and ICT. Another is to review and amend actually it has been our initiative to amend the or to have a review and take a look and amend the National Broadband or National Building Code to make it mandatory for property developers to provide a common shared telco and ICT infra in all property developments, both for vertical and horizontal. Another is, I think, in terms of readiness, we need to establish standards and common industry level metrics and methods to define it in terms of ICT infra and affordability. Because it will be very difficult to establish whether the different network developments and investment are effectively providing the necessary ICT infrastructure. And worse, it becomes perceptional, meaning we don't have a single point of reference in terms of understanding what is network readiness as a term. Another is reviewing the existing ICT skills development, which also mentioned during our discussion, particularly in its framework, to match it with the evolving needs for the ICT and the Philippine adoption of IR 4.0, and encourage the participation of ICT stakeholders in the government, even partnering with academia to update the Philippine skills framework. And lastly, developing a viable policy for retention of critical ICT skills and competence beyond just mere prohibition of critical ICT talents to other markets. So those things, but what we see, there are also promising development under the administration. Number one would be the approval of the Public Services Act as amended, which revises the update of the 85-year-old CA 146 and defines telecommunication as critical infra, as well allowing 100% foreign ownership of public utilities and critical infrastructure, not including also the certain protection for related national security. And of course, the inclusive access to satellite services, which pave way the entry of new satellite players such as Starlink, Pacific, and other to provide connectivity in our geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. The National Cybersecurity Plan of 2022 as well, assuring the continuous operations of nation's critical infra and public military networks. And lastly, of course, the Bayanihan 2 law, which help open up the barriers from tedious permitting. That's taking us too long, maybe 8 to 12 months, and slows down sometimes, that hinders telco build in terms of our rollout. So I think those, Sir Orly, are part of the things that we need to consider in terms of planning this all digital infrastructure solutions to our partners and clients and businesses.
Thank you very much, Engineer Derek. Yeah, that's quite a few. We'd really love to get a list or your notes on that so that we can actually share them with our legislators. How about Mr. John Gonzalez of PLDT? I'm sure on your side you have a lot of policy concerns.
Yeah. So thank you, Orly. I believe multiple private sector groups are already mobilizing and are recommending policy reforms, in every industry, from healthcare, agriculture to social services. And all of them require a certain level of digital transformation. It is important for us to understand that the foundation of digitalization is based on our telecommunications infrastructure. And our colleague from Globe has actually mentioned a lot of it already. But I think to be very specific, there's really one that we really want to happen or want to see. It's critical for us to streamline the guidelines for telco construction permits. Today we have about 25,000 cell towers combined, compared to the 60,000 that Vietnam has. Now, one reason why we lag in infrastructure is because the process takes about 6 to 8 months, and local LGUs have various interpretations of the law, of the local government code. Having said that, there's 29 individual permits for each telco tower to be constructed. Now, with a policy like ARTA or anti-red tape law being enforced permanently, the process will be significantly reduced. Hazing infrastructure expansion and accelerating accessibility to digital services for everyone. Now, it's also good to see that a lot of our MSME are, embracing digital services. But it is also good to see government agencies, no, starting to embrace cloud and digital services, and we need more of that, no. We need to be able to support them and be able to provide services for their respective communities. We see agencies already adopting cloud-based solutions, migrating some workloads to the cloud and altogether building native cloud-based applications. And I'm also very happy to see here our colleague from Meta or Facebook, because they're actually very crucial to our growth as well, no? With that regard, we're also very happy to see DTI's support for incoming hyperscaler companies, no? Meta included, that are investing points of presence in the Philippines and making the Philippines as the next hyperscaler hub in Asia Pacific. So we need to see continued government support for all of these activities and continually reform policies to make sure that we grow as a nation digitally.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask our guest from Avoidis Infracapital. Really, you talked about earlier about investment banking and the fintech being really transformational nowadays. What are you seeing from your point of view, from your organization, in terms of challenges, policy challenges that you would like government to act on?
Well, the same thing as what's been mentioned by the other speakers, right? Especially in putting up passive digital infrastructure, the permitting processes, fragmented policies, right? Or inadequate policy directions from government on how to address or to fast track permitting processes. You have the barangay levels, coming up with and LGUs coming up with different requirements as that of the national agencies. The usual stuff, no. It's been addressed thankfully by DICT, but I think we need more, right? And providing basic services also to the public is also an issue that we want to help government with. And we think that digitalization of government services, like one-stop permitting processes, can help in accelerating permitting, no, and in fast tracking the construction of building of passive digital infrastructure. I think somebody also mentioned about right-of-way issues, and this is where this is a problem of everyone. And government, owns the government owns most accessible rights of way. And one thing I think that that can be done, no, between the private sector and the government in accelerating digitalization and building of digital infra is to allow private companies not to use their rights of way, but possibly through PPP.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much, Ms. Cosette Canilao. Now I'd like to ask, our friend here from Microsoft Philippines, Peter, as on the part of being the world's #1 solutions provider in terms of digital transformation, I'm sure in your years here you've seen and had so much experience in engaging government, and I am aware of some of your advocacies in terms of helping government in the digital transformation. Are you seeing any resistance points that you feel can be addressed by policy?
Orly, thank you for the question. We find actually the Philippine government quite accommodating, and we find them actually willing to listen. So maybe just some thoughts, and I wear maybe a couple of different hats here. Thank you for asking me. I was hoping to weigh in with my BPO industry hat on. One thing that I wanted to point out is, maybe just thinking about the encouraging the work from anywhere provisions, because right now, let's say a lot of the BPO companies benefit from the PESA provisions, but in the PESA provisions, you have to have most of your workforce do the work in the zone or in the building itself. So that would be contradictory with work from anywhere. The thing with work from anywhere is, it gives flexibility. Let's say just some basic ones, like if you're a working mom, you might benefit from having that flexibility of watching your children at a certain time and work at different off hours. It could also encourage, let's say, more work in the emerging areas. So it's not all the work's not concentrated in the major metropolitan areas. So I think it could actually spur growth in emerging cities across the Philippines. So I'd be, I'm hoping that, there's a better balance in how we encourage work from anywhere. In terms of some of the things as a hyperscaler, if you will, so what we're looking at and spend a lot of time on, because now there's a lot of talk about, I think we heard it from John Gonzalez and PLDT, do we have the opportunity for being a regional hub or even just having in-country data centers? So I think there's a couple of dimensions there to think about. One is probably, it has a lot to do with, data protection and data privacy. I think the current provisions today are, if there's a breach, I think the language could be interpreted as the government could ask you to turn it over. So I don't think there's a resistance there. I think there's just more having to provide consciousness that, obviously that's not something that, the host would want to have to do, because then they're not protecting the data of their customers, and you lose trust if that were to happen. So, fundamental things like that, I think we could do a lot more in providing clarity and encouraging cybersecurity. I think we see this happening in the banks. I think that, across government, because, what's happening, what we see in cybersecurity are, you have these larger systemic, just massive attacks that, because we're all interconnected, so these breaches tend to be systemic in nature. So when you think about that, your primary targets, I think the number one targets in cyber breaches are actually the telcos, right? Because these guys have over 80 million subscribers. So if you want to inflict maximum damage, you would go for the telcos. In the top three is actually government, because we're all having to provide information, personal information to government. So I think we could tighten up our cybersecurity provisions and make sure we encourage those and are clear about, what needs, the fundamental things that need to be in place to protect and preserve trust in the system. And then perhaps maybe the third thing, Orly, is the be mindful about, we also have to compete across the region to keep jobs, to bring jobs here. I think this is true whether you're talking about, the benefits for locating your BPO centers here, or whether you're locating manufacturing, or you're trying to attract digital infrastructure investments. I think we have to be conscious about, balancing what we need to do for ourselves at home, but also in the context of, are we competitive in the region so that we attract those investments in our country versus losing it elsewhere? So just some thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those thoughts, Peter. Yeah, I do align with a lot of those ideas. Digital transformation is really to us a very strategic, very strategic to our recovery. Now I'd like to ask our guest from Meta or Facebook. Well, that Meta's platform, Facebook, is actually the default social media platform of the Philippines. Data has proven that time again, and every year Facebook is the #1 social media platform of virtually all Filipinos, for that matter. And there have been certain occasions when, well, of course, when you're a top platform, there are so many policy proposals that tend to put some sort of regulation. From your point of view, Xia, what are your observations? And you mentioned Facebook being an enabling platform. for building communities, and even now even starting these little businesses to your marketplace. Do you see any policy reforms that government needs to look at or needs to take a careful study?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Firstly, let me, I heard all the points that were raised by the esteemed panelists. Firstly, let me mention that the messaging or the focus that we are seeing by the new government on digital transformation, that is very, very encouraging. And in addition to what has been said, what I would recommend is to have a multi-stakeholder approach towards policies and regulations. That is, whenever you want to have these regulations or policies modified, or if you want to come up with new, it's always good to consult all the stakeholders, collect the input from everyone, and move in a collective way, because that is the nature of the internet now, and even as we move into the future, that there are so many unknowns and so many things that we have to look at. So only a multi-stakeholder approach can actually take us there, and that will require so many things: consultation, capacity development in the government sector, maybe help from think tanks, and so many other areas that we need to work on. And then you asked me or mentioned the platform, the Facebook platform. Before I talk about that, I'd like to acknowledge and also appreciate the partnerships that we have with on the ground with Globe and PLDT. We really appreciate that, and also the subsea investment that we are making. We believe that that's going to create. Our calculations show that by 2025, 380,000 new jobs will be created because of these investments that are being made. Now, coming to the platform and the way I see, as we have been talking in this forum, the development of e-commerce businesses has become a vital lifeline for Philippines during the pandemic, and we believe that this will continue to be that way. And the future that we see is that we will have a hybrid mode, so it will not completely go to the old way of doing things. We'll still have lots of digital initiatives and digital platforms and digital commerce going on. That will be a critical pivot for the small businesses to sustain life and livelihood. And it also provides an alternative for the consumer to have access to a variety of goods. And as I mentioned, we see that there will be a hybrid future for this sector, and this we need to support this with the appropriate measures, whether that is related to connectivity, whether that is related to safety. And that is why at Meta we continuously take steps for the safety of people who are using this internet, and we are committed to continue investing in the safety and security to protect people, to continue investing. We continue investing in our tools, and we would like to empower the MSMEs in the digital economy. And we will working with any partner and the government and other stakeholders to improve the overall digital economy, and see, as I said in my earlier statement, that whenever there is an opportunity, we would recommend that a multi-stakeholder approach is adopted, and we will definitely contribute to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. You mentioned quite a little bit about how Meta is investing in this undersea cable that's going across the Philippines. And from my understanding, it seems like a low-hanging fruit that the whole, at least the whole island of Luzon would benefit from to boost the broadband speeds. As you are now heavily investing in it, what do you think should be the government counterpart to make it happen? If the private sector is like our telcos and Meta is investing heavily, what from your point of view should be what might be a complementing investment to make things aligned and make things happen faster?
Yeah, so as I mentioned that we are already getting very positive signals from the new government, and I think the main help that the government and the regulators can do, and as you can see, I mean, if you just take the subsea cable or fiber investment, of course, we only have the relevant authorities involved. But overall, if you look at the use of ICTs or digital technologies, then it's in education, it's in healthcare, and everyone. So the main help that I believe from the connectivity point of view that is required is in the policies and reducing the time and in building in efficiency. So I hope that the new government would be able to do that, to bring in the efficiencies. First of all, you need to have the right policies. So a review of the policies, and whatever policies you come up with, then actually moving according to that, to have some kind of an action plan and to reduce the time it takes to get the approvals and another thing. And the government, as I mentioned, our initial discussions, it shows that they are moving in these directions. So we are quite positive about the way things are moving.
Okay, thank you. How about some insights from Mr. John Gonzalez of PLDT? We heard how huge the yearly investments of PLDT is in terms of all of this infrastructure, and we are all know about how lagging we are in terms of our neighbors on how even government is actually leading the investments. Do you feel what do you feel that government should focus on in terms of investing on infrastructure, given that the telcos piece, especially leading all of these investments? On what part of this digital infrastructure gap should government focus on?
Yeah, thanks for that, Orly. We believe that investment is necessary and critical first step. As mentioned by many of the panelists, multi-private sector advisory councils have been created, all with the objective of providing insights, know-how, and even resources to advance the transformation of the country from where it is now. And from what we've seen and experienced, so this current administration is actually very open and eager to collaborate. However, all of this should progress and be sustainable. We believe that we need to embark on public-private partnerships to execute targeted programs. Revival of public-private partnerships helps generate jobs and boost economic growth. And it takes both the private sector and the government to jointly invest in nation building. Now, putting in connectivity to many parts of the country is very, very important. But even just connecting the government agencies, the smallest branches, even the barangay level, is equally important, because the government agencies are the ones providing services or delivery of public services, right? And we need to enable them. And what we've seen is, in the past has always been this disjointed approach in even providing connectivity services for the many government agencies up to the smallest local government units, and it has to start also from there. As mentioned, we've been even the SMEs are investing in digital transformation, in digital services. We need to ensure that the government, not only the national agencies, but even to the smallest unit of the local government also does invest in this, no? And I think the private sector is very open to work with the government, but we need to be very targeted, no? And once we target specific opportunities, we need to make sure that these are sustainable.
Yeah, thank you. Now I'd like to ask our speaker from Globe Telecom. You are also doing your part in leading all of these investments in infrastructure. Do you have any suggestions to government on where they could probably start investing?
Yeah, I think to support also the mentions from Dr. Shah and Sir John, the telecommunications and ICT industry is capital incentive, For Globe and other telcos, the capex to revenue is always 50%, above 50%. So I cannot see, we cannot see a scenario that any tech-driven growth can be done without much investment, right? Since it's also mentioned that the digital and physical infrastructure, the build program sought to provide from physical connectivity between areas of development and to transport produce and raw materials from source to the consumer. So what we would like also to have an PPP for digital build program to provide for communications and digital connectivity, especially to the GIDAS areas or the geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas, because this serves as the foundation enabler for a digital Filipino. And so the private sector has been always a partner to the government, especially when it comes to bringing relevant solution, technologies, and even digital transformation. We can imagine that our nation's digital transformation journey can only be achieved through a close collaboration between critical stakeholders. This can be the private sector industry, the national, and of course the local government has, they might have a different perspective on each of the IRRs. Of course, we also have to include the academe, investors, and financial institution. There are many ongoing initiatives, an example of which is the Livable Cities Challenge or LCC initiative, the DICT Digital Cities initiative, where DTI initiative is to establish a regional inclusive innovation center, which a strong partnership between the government, the industry, and the academe. Collaboration to set up networks of creative communities, innovative and entrepreneurial Filipinos to provide solutions and better products. Another one is the Philippine Skills Framework, which was launched in 2001, intended to establish a common framework and the reference that employees should share in order to ensure there's a match between the jobs and skills. But it must be clear that the collaboration efforts and areas of collaboration will have to continually evolve in sync with our rapidly changing socioeconomic and technology landscape. That would also involve our private and public sectors.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek. We have a question in the Q&A feature. It's from Warren Agustin de Guzman. He would like to ask the speakers to comment about cybersecurity or security. And his question is about now we've been hearing all about these complaints and issue about spam texts, violations of digital, of our personal info, our privacy, and also all of these issues about these behavior now circulating. We get it every day in our phones, and potentially can be damaging to our digital economy. Can you comment on how we should address this, our cybersecurity issues and cyber criminals? Do you think we need more policy enforcement? What do you think?
Yeah, I think some of the existing practice that we are doing now, both telcos, we have two sides of it. Okay, one is the telco side or the network side, and the other one is the consumer side. for the telco, we have been compliant with the NTC's mandate, of course, with the in stopping these spams, right? So that's one. Number one is compliance. Second is we are also actively activating feature set filters to all the interconnects and the channels where these potential sources can come from. So we block them continually. And lastly, we have results. Actually, we have numbers we publish online. We're in, I think, around 14,000 plus of numbers or SIM cards that are linked to scamming have been blocked, and progressively we are continually blocking them. And of course, on the consumer side, we also have to educate our consumers. We have programs like the Digital Thumbprint and the Make It Safe PH, wherein we actively campaign and raise awareness to our consumers to be vigilant whenever engaging with these types of text and spams. Actually, we are encouraging them and telling them not to engage at all. Do not click the link, particularly on the spam. And I think it should be a concerted effort. Actually on the derailing and the undoing in the progress of digitalization, what we can say is that it's a concerted effort. Since we are too fast to adapt to these types of technology, we also have to work as hard to educate these people, particularly those who are online. So as mentioned also in the framework, that establishing policies at the same time raising this awareness on online security, cybersecurity, and even the strong implementation of the DPA or Data Privacy Act of 2012 should also be part of our inclusive approach to addressing these problems and issues. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Derek. I'd like to hear also from John. Yeah, as a telco, do you feel that you have this power or mandate to be proactive in addressing all of these? Because we are all the clients of telcos, and we get exposed to all of these risks. Tell us a little bit of what you're doing now and what you feel you can do more, and what you need from government to be able to do that.
So thank you, Orly, for that question. No? As Peter Makero of Microsoft mentioned, probably the topmost organization that would be the target of cyber criminals would be the telco. No? And I think the telcos, PLDT, Globe, and then the rest have really invested on technology, to ensure that we are protected, our assets are protected, the data of our customers are protected. And whatever best practices or solutions that we have, we're also collaborating with government to probably use the same techniques or solutions that we have to ensure that they are also protected. The data that the government has is also protected. So let me point out probably two things. I'm sure there's going to be many more, but one area that is important to consider is really the legislation of SIM registration. SIM registration can help eradicate mobile phone-aided criminal activities. And we have always maintained our stance that the SIM card registration bill will help quash the proliferation of fraudulent spam messages, phishing cases, and fraud, and will boost telecom security efforts to keep subscriber and businesses safe from criminal activities. However, execution of this and verification should also be made in tandem with the national ID to ensure validity of the registered users. And we actually made together with some other organizations to recommend this to the government, and I believe they're listening, and eventually they would support this. In terms of cybersecurity, we need to ensure a holistic approach against evolving risk and threats brought about by cybercrime in the public sector. Now, any service interruption, data leakage, or loss of data will translate to loss of trust in the institutions that that serves us. No, to mitigate this risk, we need to be able to predict system vulnerabilities from attacks, proactively detect a threat, prevent intrusion, and respond accordingly. First, the government needs to make an assessment of all of its IT assets. Determine inherent risks, especially those that are critical to the operations. And for us, in the telco side of the business, we do this quarterly, if not even monthly. We continuously make assessments of our IT risk and determine inherent risk. And be able to ensure that we are very secure. We put in best-in-class cybersecurity solutions to detect and prevent intrusions. We also need best talents or experts to ensure that we are able to recover from any attack. The best way, again, to do this is via shared cybersecurity platform. And even a security operations center, because it's difficult to build platforms, cybersecurity platforms individually per agency. I think the best path really is to standardize on platforms and make this a shared service for all agencies. Consolidate all IT assets and enroll them on a security operations center, so that shared talents, shared resources are able to really look into vulnerabilities, be able to patch them, to secure them, and if there are any attacks, be able to respond to them. In addition to this, we need to train and develop skills through grassroots development. I think this has been mentioned several times already in this panel. We need the academe to include cybersecurity in their curriculum to accelerate availability of cyber-ready workforce, through dedicated cyber and data privacy programs. So that's basically it from us.
Thank you, John. We have another question here from one of our audience. It's from Jose Quisia. It's for Professor Dindo Manhit. Professor Dindo, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the question is, well, it's about your insights about foreign and local investment atmosphere here. Do you think that the foreign investors are getting the confidence that they need right now, for example, in terms of respect for the sanctity of contracts, rule of law, and how we are in terms of a level playing field for more businesses to participate and bring in those foreign and direct investments? What are your insights on that?
Thank you for that question, Orly. It's something that I would say I'm cautiously optimistic, hopeful at this moment. And my basis is the current government was able to build a strong economic team that is respected and that are advocate of a liberal economic order driven by rule of law, and that means sanctity of contracts. That is the background of our economic team. So the challenge now is, will they be given autonomy and power to really set the stage for an investment-led growth? With policy pronouncements, they even launched post-SONA of the president, an 8-point socioeconomic program whereby our own cabinet secretaries put some substance or content within the State of the Nation address of the president. But what I still find lacking is the next stage, which is how do they execute? How would they really use this opportunity to say that the Philippines would like to generate more investment that will drive our growth? Consumption is there, but the pandemic experience should have taught us that the service sector cannot drive our growth. Stronger growth from the manufacturing sector, stronger growth, especially from a battered sector, which is agriculture. And that's where we need confidence. But before foreigners will get confident, given that there are enough legal framework to really that we are more open. The Public Service Act, the Retail Trade Liberalization Act, the Foreign Investment Act passed by the previous Congress. I always emphasize that, passed by the previous Congress. We keep on giving credit to the executive branch, considering it's passed by the Congress, and the version are passed by Congress. And what I'm saying here is that before we get foreigners to look into us, we also need to build confidence in our own domestic investors. Stakeholders in this call are speakers and the institutions that they represent. If we can help them really generate more local investments, I think foreign investments will follow. So it's really building that policy environment that will sustain investment-led growth in our country, Orly.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, that's really true. I have one more question for everybody in this panel. And really, we've been looking at how game-changing or how strategically important digital transformation would be. And we talked about a lot of issues, things we need to do in terms of policy, and an enabling environment. I'd like to ask you to do some visioning a little bit. And for a minute, let's pretend or envision that all of these gaps in terms of infrastructure, we're able to address all of these gaps in terms of policy, government is able to deliver. And let me give us an insight on what you envision or what you think the Philippines would be, what government will be, what our people will be, how our businesses will be, and how our economy will be. What would be like? What would be the Philippines be like in the local, national, and global context when we are successful in all of these digital transformation initiatives? Can we start first with Cosette?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Orly.
Yeah.
And you know, the reason that that we are in this business now, infrastructure, is to create a better Philippines, right? Where the people are really given good services, no? And it's not that hard to imagine. We've seen how most of us have been to Singapore, right? And it works there. And that's what we want our government to be, to work here, government services to work here in the Philippines. No, not only government services, but our infrastructure, a more egalitarian society.
Thank you very much, Cosette. How about Ismail, Dr. Shah? You've seen how the impact of your platform is all over the world. How do you think the Philippines will look like when we are fully digitally transformed?
Yes, so I mean, I actually now live in Singapore, so I can relate to the previous comment by Cossetto. But I believe that every country is different, and it's not only the digital transformation part, but also the local culture, the local part. So the transformation journeys can be different, and it can be, I mean, you can still be successful and be different. This is what I believe. So it's, but one important aspect that I would like to mention is that beside all these connectivity related issues, the policies, and all the other issues that we talked about, I think it's also the society that we need to work on, the how the society is developed, the educational system, and how, like for example, the discipline and is introduced into the society, the respect for rule of law. I'm not saying that it's not there. I'm just saying that, you know, all these aspects from the social side also, that contributes to the overall digital journey, or any journey for that matter. So that aspect also is important, that we work with the people, and also develop the society as we move into the digital transformation era. And going back to just re-emphasizing my earlier point, it may be a different journey, it may be a different way of doing things, but then for example, Singapore, we can have the good learning, but at the same time, there are so many good things that you already have in your in the culture of Philippines, in the society of Philippines. So while preserving that, how can we grow in this digital transformation world and digitally transformed world? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. And John, what are your visions, or what do you think digitally transformed Philippines would look like?
No, the digital future of the Philippines is really, really very exciting. Even though we have many challenges, what the pandemic brought us is that people are now surfing online, they're shopping digitally, they're even cash payments, digital payments is on the rise. No, I think Filipinos are digitally savvy, and in terms of how we actually grow digitally as a country, we don't really need to reinvent the wheel. We have so many references or use cases from our neighboring countries, no, like Australia, Singapore, South Korea, and even China. I mean, investment-led growth was, I guess, led by China, right? Phenomenal growth, no. But I think it really starts off with the mentality that we need to really work together. I think in the past, what has happened is that even government agencies are working in silos, right? And I think the best path really forward is for each of us, even the private sector and the public sector, to work jointly with a common aspiration, no? And identify programs that we can really work on and deliver. And hopefully that all of these efforts will transcend to the next administration. It shouldn't stop here, right? I guess the problems that we've had is that whatever programs that we undertake, when there's a new administration, there's something new again, right? We need to restart everything. It has to transcend, no? It really has to start also off with a framework. We need to come up with a framework of how to do this collaboratively and jointly between the private and the public sector.
Thank you, John. And Derek, what would a digital Philippines look like?
Yeah, actually, just thinking, maybe to give some a backgrounder to Dr. Shah, Philippines is an archipelago. So we need to understand that the Philippines is full of islands. So while it's really a vision for us to connect everyone else's, putting up a fiber, a line, a wired solution to every island is very impractical, right? So we need to complement that with wireless solutions, right? So that's my first vision, to get everyone to make everyone have the access. Okay, everyone has access to internet, and it should be accessible to all, because that's a foundation, as I've shared in my slide, that there would be three eyes of innovations, right? You need to have the intra and inclusivity as well, and of course the innovation. And in that layer, you'll see that there will always be a connectivity requirement, and connecting everyone else to the internet is one of my vision, particularly to the GIDAS areas, or the geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. We wanted we wanted every family to be connected, and we wanted to make their dreams come true, as it's mentioned in our vision, right? Second, we also wanted to make businesses flourish by enabling infra and Internet of Things to make every operations, or to converge the information and operations technology of each of the businesses to make them efficient, right? Be it in the private or be it in the government, we wanted to see efficiency by going digital. Imagine if you have a lot of an API marketplace wherein you wanted to pay for BIR, you just link the API, then you can already pay through your payment application. As easy as that, right? You don't need to fall in line just to pay for your bill or to pay for your premium. And lastly, of course, translating the smallest unit, a family, and businesses, we see a digital city, which is also the fabric of digital city always starts with intelligent home, an intelligent building, and of course the intelligent cities, wherein you can put a lot of sensors in every city to do either safety features. It can also have transportation or traffic management system, intelligent parking systems, wherein we can already be efficient in terms of, or we can be we can reduce our carbon footprint by finding the closest parking slot that you can get, right? The intelligent lightings, wherein we can also save a lot of energy whenever these lights are not in use, whenever there are no people to serve, right, in those particular areas. And some other references we can think of, particularly in terms of the putting the livable city we see in the future, or the city of the future as we say it. And
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you there, Derek. Yeah, really, really beautiful visions. And now I'd like to ask Professor Jinto Manhit, how would you like to envision our government systems, our bureaucracy be like if we have this e-governance visions or initiatives successfully implemented? You're on mute. You're on mute. Yeah.
Thank you, Arlie. It reminds me of my previous life, when I was teaching public management and development management at De La Salle University. And early on, I advocated the use of technology in government, and even started using the concept of governance as different from governing. How you can work with other stakeholders if government does not have the capacity to deliver in some areas. And try to do that when we tried to computerize the Senate as early as 1996, 97. And also, if you remember, Orly, you served in government with me in the Department of Education. We introduced the Department of Education, Culture and Sports. It reflects the time that I was saying this computerization program that brought the concept of computer education to the public schools and to the teachers. And now, fast forward where we are, when I hear all these cabinet secretaries saying this, the digital transformation of government, I hope there's enough resources that will be placed into it. It will take a lot of change management on the part of our cabinet secretaries, but we need to move forward with it. Our own population adapted to it. We have digitally transformed ourselves, our lifestyle, and we've seen that across demographics in some of our data since the start of the pandemic. Question is, can government transform itself also? And transforms its own policy, regulatory policy, to really enable both the public sector and the private sector to work together to transform the Philippines as digitally ready, from infrastructure to systems, to the use of other technologies, to push our own economy to move forward, not only the public sector.
Thank you very much. And on that note, we're really doing good time. And as of this point, we'll move on to my closing remarks to end this very, very exciting discussion about digital transformation and digital infrastructure. The economic continuity and recovery are critical to all sectors. And for this, digital transformation is now indispensable, which I believe is the biggest game changer affected by the pandemic. And it was mentioned that in an October 2021 Strat-Based Commission Social Weather Station survey by Professor Manhit, that almost 9 in 10 Filipinos, or 89%, agree that the benefits of digital technologies such as strong cell phone signals, fast e-banking, and social media can greatly help create jobs and businesses. 92% of respondents nationwide say the government should build, upgrade, and extensively expand the country's digital infrastructure to improve speed, reliability, and access to the internet nationwide. So our people want this. The public appreciates the value of the private sector, with 4 out of 5, or 82% of the survey respondents agreeing that the growth of the Philippine economy will be accelerated if the government collaborates with the private sector. Cloud-based digital technologies are the default communications and productivity tools of this new digital world. These archaic bureaucracies with old, linear, analog processes and policies must now be replaced with a more dynamic and light speed efficiency and transparency of digital technologies. These are the benefits of digital technology that boost productivity and even curbs corrupt practices. While government is still developing its ICT capacity and talent, the private sector is a ready partner for technology and expertise. They are actually taking the lead in investing and developing innovative digital services to boost a growing digital marketplace and even venture into becoming a major global player. But before this very exciting potential can happen, there are several digital readiness issues that must be prioritized as foundational requisites to be competitive in a digital economy. We need to help government policymakers understand and act to address the resistance encountered by technology innovators because of bureaucratic gauntlets, as I call them, causing expensive delays in digital infrastructure builds. More so, an appreciation of the magnitude of investments required to develop and sustain a network of digital infrastructures to support convergent digital services we need to access regularly through our devices. Though primarily from the private telcos, heavy investments to expand and upgrade digital infrastructures must be complemented by a competent workforce that have the matching skills for the digitalized operations of industries. Here is where the educational institutions must keep their training programs at pace with fast evolving digital technologies. We need our leaders to understand how technology can be installed as a tool for good governance and economic recovery. A digital mindset, if you may, that will champion the country's digital transformation and will nurture symbiotic linkages that will harness the private sector as the driver of investments, innovation, jobs, sustainable growth, and competitiveness on a global scale. With that, I'd like to close this beautiful session and like to thank all our speakers who have really given very great insights on our topic today. On behalf of Stratbase ADRi and Citizen Watch Philippines, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Orly.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.